Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Running Wild Podcast. I'm your co-host Rich. Alongside me, as always, my co-host Runz.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're bringing you a special kind of early week podcast, but we're actually going back to our normal schedule, so you'll catch us twice this week. So double the fun for you guys. We have a lot to talk about from this weekend. I probably shouldn't have said double the fun. Anyway, we have a lot to talk about this weekend with the WWE UK Tournament, my trip down to Hotlanta for some Ring of Honor and some Ring of Honor news out of there. We won't really spoil. But just before that, we want to remind you that we're brought to you in partnership with pwponderings.com, with lastwordinprowrestling.com, and with the Wrestling to the Max Network. All right, so without further ado, that UK tournament, man. Just overall, like before we talk about, I guess, the nights individually, what did you think about that?
All right, I don't necessarily think we need to go match by match, but from with Skrull and Sabre and Ospreay obviously not being included in this tournament, I was a little like, who are these guys? But then, when they released the whole list, and I was like, oh, Mark Andrews, TNA, PWG, Pete Dunne, PWG, oh, okay. Then, Wolfgang and Trent Severn and Tyler Bate, Devlin, basically everyone who won in the first round, I was like, okay, that was the correct choice. I like this guy. And I thought that was fantastic. I thought, what they did on the first night was basically just, establishing the guys, letting them get a nice win, having a good match, and then that was it. But as we'll get into on night two, the stories that they told in the tournament just makes me want to see a tournament on every show on WWE. Like, yo, you guys clearly know how to book this stuff. Give me one with the main roster guys. Like what Pete Dunne did throughout the tournament, brilliant. That would get anyone on the main roster over.
Yeah, that was just really smart. I mean, William Regal's face.
Oh.
And, we'll get there, but William Regal's face at the end of night two was...
At the end of night one?
No. Like, before the last match.
Okay.
He just looked over at Dunne, and that guy's face sold better than, half the WWE roster.
Regal, as proven by his role in the company and the respect that he has throughout the company and the industry, is that guy was one of the best. When he was King Regal and the commissioner and all, that guy was money. And when he was just the blue blood and that kind of thing, just wrestling, yeah, he was great, but he never showed that full comedy and that character that he has. And man, once he did, he's the man.
It's so unbelievable, just what he's able to do. A lot of wrestlers could just learn from him. Dude's not even wrestling, and he's just a look. Put someone over better than anything else he could have done.
Yep, I completely agree. And the whole interaction with him and Dunne, from the end of the first night when he attacked Gladwell, I think it was Gladwell, setting up everything for the second night. It told that story. Pete Dunne is here to win. He doesn't care. He's not going to follow the rules. And, to have William Regal, who's now the ultimate good guy, and especially in the UK, and then just kind of, this young punk who's pushing back, was a great story to tell throughout the next day. And they did a great job with it. And, I think this was the first time I ever heard Pete Dunne speak. And I was very happy because his character that he has, he needed that deep voice, and he had it, and I was like, oh, perfect. This fits that kind of badass mold. If he had some weird type of not so deep manly voice, I would have been like, oh, come on.
So you're basically talking about Bobby Lashley.
In a way, yes. I wasn't thinking of him. I was actually trying to think of another British guy whose voice I just wouldn't fit with him. But
okay.
If he sounded like Sabre, it wouldn't be a good mix. But because he had that just kind of tough guy,
yeah,
it works. He was the guy that I was keeping an eye on because I've seen a couple of his matches, and I like Mark Andrews, but I didn't think he was going to win. I knew he would make a run, so to see them matched up in the semis was pretty cool to see. And like I said, he was the guy I was looking forward to most. I'm pleasantly surprised and pleased with what they did throughout it. I was really pulling for him to win, but I didn't really care. Like, Tyler Bate was pretty cool. I liked the song that the people were singing. I like that he's 19 years old. It's good stuff.
No, it was a great story, and I thought, what Dunne did with attacking him and making him the underdog, right away I felt, okay, so to me it seemed like he was going to win, or what I actually enjoyed about it was Dunne could have won, and then you have a completely good reason. That's what I thought was going to happen. And now he would win, and then the babyface would chase it for a little while. But I think Bate was a little more of an unknown, at least to me, than Dunne. So maybe that played into it. That this is someone who, especially he's 19, this is someone that they can, put their own mold on. So that works. But I don't know. So now, one thing I'll say is I really like the tournament style more than I liked the tournament style for the Cruiserweight Classic.
Right, because it was a lot more condensed. I loved, because it was all in one night, the 3 matches in one night for the finals, it gave Pete Dunne that time to, bully everyone, and it gave the suspense when you didn't know if Bate was going to wrestle or not. For a second, I was wondering, could Sabre come in and replace him in the finals and win this thing, or something like that. I really didn't know what they were going to do. So then he was wrestling. I was like, man, does that mean he's going to win? Maybe not. Maybe you go this way. So it wasn't predictable at all. It was really entertaining with guys that I didn't necessarily know. It was, you can't overstate the just wherewithal, the intelligence to have this in front of the UK and not have this in Florida or something like that, because people in the UK knew these guys, and all the songs and that sort of a thing. It made it, because I was like, oh, okay, this guy's ill. Oh, okay. And not so much, their reactions helped.
Oh, 100%. Now, I was actually talking on Twitter with the Revolting Blob, and he was actually commenting how he didn't like the crowd. He thought that they were kind of in for themselves a little bit too much. What I saw, and to be fair, all chips on the table. I was watching it. My son and my wife were sleeping, so I was trying to watch it low key and not be kind of crazy. And I was looking away from the computer a couple times. But I didn't get the feeling that they were super putting themselves over. Did you get that feeling?
No, I didn't get it, as much as just at a certain, the Raw after WrestleMania or something like that. I feel like that's a little more selfish of them. I thought they tried to make the guys look better. I thought the chants and the songs really helped, especially with Tyler Bate. But, at times maybe, but I don't think even as much as that Raw after WrestleMania, like I said.
Yeah, I think, to me, just from watching a couple of soccer matches and everything, I feel like that's what British fans do at events,
right.
No?
Right, if you, I've watched, the ICW with Grado and those sort of moments, and that's all they do. They all sing the songs. They have their own chants and everything like that. And, if at times, yes, it can be a little too much or too over the top or focused on the fans, whatever. But I don't think that was the case over the course of the tournament.
No, not at all. So,
the one thing that we can discuss as a amazing, great, eye-opening experience throughout the tournament was Michael Cole and Nigel McGuinness. They were absolute money. It was great to hear Nigel on WWE, and with Cole, immediately I felt like, wow, these guys have been doing this forever together. They meshed right away. They have that just natural chemistry, and I think Cole even commented after, like, where have you been all my life and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see if Nigel makes his way onto WWE TV as a commentator or in whatever role. But, I think that combo was amazing.
No, it was weird. I liked Michael Cole. I
loved him.
I don't even know how to say that.
When the big moments come, his voice is now, what I look for. I want that. Michael Cole is the main guy on WWE, so you look for that. And when the time is right and he yells and he sells things and he has that emotion, he's great. It's when he's overproduced and he has Vince and all that stuff in his ear that it gets a little annoying. But he was fantastic for the entire UK tournament.
And it's just so weird. I mean, I think it also, what we're seeing from a lot of these events where we have two-man booths is that's the best number.
Well, right. That also helped. No annoying Byron Saxton or David Otunga.
Like, I can deal with the fact that, okay, so I think Austin Aries brings a lot to the 205 Live.
Right, because, he is someone who just chimes in when it's right, and he is a natural heel. He puts down the guys he should. He backs up the guys he should, and he's perfect. And there was talk recently that Cole is asking for a kind of a reduced role. He wants to step behind the scenes and just produce the announcers and work with them and that kind of thing. So maybe we see that at some point, and the Nigels and Corey Graves gets a bigger role, and that sort of thing kind of, filters around.
I hope so. It just seems also that there's such a glut of guys they have there. What do you do with Otunga if you don't have him there? What do you do with...
Nothing.
Well...
I don't know. Bring back the pre-show, give him his own... Have him and Jennifer Hudson have a show on the network. I don't know. Do something.
Have him and Jennifer Hudson maybe that's not so crazy. All right.
Right. Yeah, see, it's not. You have Hollywood, she's famous, it's perfect.
All right, well, so, Bates ends up winning, and I thought it was the right choice. I mean, you could have put Dunne over. It didn't seem to really matter.
Didn't matter.
What I thought was interesting with some of the fan reactions were there were times where like somebody was about to win and the crowd seemed super hyped, and then the other guy won, and they were like, "All right, that's cool." Like they were still standing cheering.
Right, because this was what was it, 16, of the top or most popular guys throughout the UK. So it was cool. Like certain guys who was the only guy from the country, or he's Wolfgang was a big part of ICW. Like they got big time reactions, and
huge.
You don't get that anywhere else. So like a guy like Wolfgang who I look at as like, oh, really? Like, I see this guy 25 times if I go to any independent show. It's just that's what you see is an out of shape, long hair, scraggy looking guy. But then he's in the ring, he can move. The fans react to him like a star, and by the end of it, you're like, okay, hey, this guy is a star. I see why he was champion and that sort of a thing.
100%.
It's amazing what good storytelling does.
So I saw somebody tweet something like, in 2 days, you guys put more people over by just having a competition and basing it around that than you have on Raw. Blow it up and start over.
Right. It's crazy, man.
And I think going forward, this is more of the event that they need to be creating. You want someone
I want
to
a
see
King
something?
of the Ring like tomorrow.
Yeah, like do stuff like this. I mean, Flow Slam's already doing it with the Styles battle. I think it's a smart idea. I think it gets more. I feel like it'll get more eyes on it from people, for lack of a better term, like you and me. Then you get like that, Japan show, like the house show, or the Roadblock, yeah, right. The original Roadblock was
the
just
first
like,
one, yeah.
The intention was it was just like a house show that they were putting up. So
right.
Do things like that. Do things like this UK tournament. Do a tournament. Do like a random. What? Everybody will watch that.
I don't get, I guess you don't want to overwork, the guys that are already overworked. But at some point, in lieu of doing something, just have another episode where you do a King of the Ring instead of an NXT, instead of a pay-per-view, instead of whatever. But put the house shows on. Do it at a house show. Do something. But that can transition us into, some of the later news that's been breaking recently is that, they're in talks with or already have a deal with ICW, from Scotland to be on the network. They're talking to Progress. They already have some relationship with Evolve, so we'll see what happens there. But, if they get these kind of companies on the network, I will happily pay $14.99, first of all. And second of all, maybe that's kind of their plan, maybe instead of having the King of eventually that stuff will happen, but they're focusing on the independents and the places where they're getting guys from and just what's going to make them money, I guess. And it makes so much sense.
It's like they're forming a worldwide NWA.
Right. They're just taking over everything like he did the first time. Except they're not, like, they don't have any part in this. They're just like, hey, you have a show. You have a nice product that's popular. Hey, you want to come on the network with it? Yeah, sure. It's just like a channel, and that's so smart.
Yeah, I just hope. I think 2016 was a fantastic year for independent organizations to rise up. And I just don't want that to be something that goes away because WWE buries them by taking everything else up.
But that's the thing. I don't think that's what's going to happen because it doesn't seem like they haven't interfered in Evolve. They're not going to interfere in ICW. They're not, they have no control over these products. They're just taking what's good and using it to their advantage on the network. And that's just good business.
But in some ways,
these companies aren't going to hurt them ever. They're not the even Ring of Honor. I can see Ring of Honor or New Japan. It's like those things are never going to be WWE. So
At the same time, do you think that the products then have to think twice about what they do in mind? Maybe WWE's like, we don't want to see this, we don't want to see that, we don't want anyone using the RKO.
Speaking of, I don't want to see this. You standing up in front of the camera is not a great vision right now. Right. But anyway, it hasn't changed Evolve. Just look at that. Evolve has been better. They've had more talent coming in. They've had better things going on, and I think that's a testament to some people are saying well, this is a breeding ground to WWE or a feeder system, but I think it's also just becoming bigger and better because of that small association, and now the product grows enormously. So I don't see, from what I heard, ICW is in an adult type promotion. They don't filter things, and they're not going to change that when it comes to the network. They're just going to put a warning label and stuff. So if that's the case, then I don't think they're going to change anything, and maybe this helps everyone.
All right. I can see that. It's important to me as a wrestling fan that other organizations don't feel limited because of the WWE being under the WWE's umbrella.
No, I don't think so. Just for one last example, look at a guy like Riddle. Went to the tryout. They told him, hey, just go hang out at Evolve. Now he's on Evolve and PWG and everywhere, and there's no real stopping any of that. He's not being held back. They're just letting him go. When I feel like the end goal clearly is eventually he's going to be on WWE.
That's a discussion also because I know that there's
it might hurt the Ring of Honors or the New Japans because certain independent guys maybe won't want to go there or have a chance to be on WWE if they go here instead. So maybe, that impacts a little bit of talent, but with Skrull and Ospreay and Dragon Lee and all these guys, it doesn't seem that way. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think that Ring of Honor definitely soon, they have the partnership with New Japan. They need to link up and have some sort of streaming service. I don't see why it can't happen.
But like New Japan already has theirs. I don't know. Like I wouldn't pay monthly for Ring of Honor. What?
Well,
I don't know.
I'll tell you that as somebody who watches all of them, if you're gonna watch, let's say they like next month, right? They're gonna have a show on February 3rd, February 4th. And then there might be one more at the end of the month. But let's say they average 3 VODs a month. If you want to watch the VODs, those are $15 a piece. Right. Right?
But so I want to watch their whatever house shows?
Okay. All right, I get that. I'm somebody who has like been immersed and watched every single minute since.
Right, but you don't enjoy it, like you know what I'm saying.
Sometimes the way they roll
some
it
stuff
out
is very good, but a lot of stuff is just filler, and it's a house show. So I don't necessarily know how much of that I want to watch. If they include the $50 a month pay-per-views or $40 a month pay-per-views, then that becomes a different story.
That's what I'm saying. $9.99.
But there are some months, but I don't know. There are some months when they don't have shows or they don't have anything really going on. So what do you do with that? And I would not pay $9.99 because that's what I pay for the WWE Network, and they're not on the same thing.
Well, the thing is, how do you justify $40? Or no, it's not $40. It's $30, right? How do you justify paying $30 for Ring of Honor pay-per-view when for every other company, basically, you can watch their shows for $15 and under?
Right.
So I think that the reason they need to move to some sort of streaming model soon is so that people will be more willing.
But it's like...
You'll do it.
So weird. It's so weird.
You would pay $9.99. You would pay easily.
I'm not gonna pay $20 for Ring of Honor and New Japan. I pay $8.99 or $8 for New Japan. I just keep that. But the see now you made me forget what. Is there going to be a Flow Slam and a High Spots and a WWE Network and a New Japan World and a Ring of Honor World? Is there really going to be 6 successful streaming devices?
Bring it on.
Or website streaming systems? You know what I mean? Like, you don't watch. I don't really either, but you don't watch stuff on the network now. Like, how much are you going to watch ICW and all of these other just kind of random companies that you don't know yet or might possibly not care about, So that's another thing. Like, it's just how much more wrestling can I pay monthly for that I can possibly watch?
My wife doesn't know on my credit card? A lot.
See, like I just I got the free month of High Spots. Like I just did that again because I just want to watch some PWG at times, and that I do because instead of me spending $75 on DVDs like I was possibly planning on doing, then I could just watch them all for $9.99 in a month and move on. So that I would rather watch that with Progress and Rev Pro and a bunch of stuff that they have on there. I don't know, man. It's really interesting. There's so much wrestling out there, but it's getting spread out, and it needs to just kind of be focused in one spot,
Like I
can't spend $100 for streaming every month.
True. No.
That $10 adds up.
I could do 40 comfortably.
Right. So say you do 15 for WWE with all the independents. And that's only $25 left.
No, you have a point. I mean, I guess wanting to consolidate things is more of my wish because then it makes my life easier.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I need some Apple TV apps. I need to get things going.
One of the things that annoys me is, at least with Optimum, if you, let's say you try to watch on your computer and you plug it into your TV, it automatically knows it's an external device, so it won't let you do it. So I was about to get the Apple TV so I could watch more of the things and just like push them from my iPad, but I feel like it's going to notice it's an external device and then shut me down. I don't know. So
even on the Apple TV, I don't know that would happen, but all right.
I'm going to try. I might be picking it up just so that I can stream a heck of a lot more wrestling on a slightly larger screen. So a little sad news from this weekend. And it's weird to talk about because of like everything that came out with him. But Snuka passed away Sunday afternoon, I believe it was. He had that whole murder trial where they said that he wasn't really fit to stand trial because he was so sick, and at least one of the things that comes out of it is that's kind of all over with right now. It's kind of sad, in this day and age with all this media that we get. The idea that the last image that I can remember now of Snuka is him at trial, And
see, I'll do you one better. The Rock posted on Instagram a picture that I believe Tamina sent him of Jimmy Snuka, sick and like just in his recliner watching old Jimmy Snuka on the TV, and I was like, yo, that is sick. And he said that she told him that for hours he just sat there in silence, watching his old footage. And The Rock questioned, like, just to know what was going through his mind, thoughts, regrets, blah, 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 whatever. But I was like, man, that's such a cool picture. That's an awesome, that's a cool way to remember him. That's like, nice. Just him watching his stuff and just reliving the glory days. That's awesome.
I mean, that guy, he did so many crazy things. The coconut over his head, busted up the hard way by Piper, put Piper over even more as a heel, just and flying off. I mean, obviously he inspired like Mick Foley to want to become a wrestler. From jumping off the cage in Madison Square Garden against Don Morocco. And for me, I mean, my first WrestleMania that I can remember very clearly when I was a child, I don't believe I was able to order this one. So I still had to wait for the tape to come out, but I got to see WrestleMania 7, and he, that was Undertaker's debut match against Jimmy Snuka. So he was he was somebody who's really a stalwart in the company. I loved watching his craziness on the Rock and Wrestling cartoon show.
Right.
He was, this is sound really weird, but I had the bed sheets, so growing up. I saw Jimmy Snuka every day when I woke up.
I slept with him, but yeah, I completely agree. I was going to say the same thing. My first memory of Snuka was, that WrestleMania match against the Undertaker, and I never really knew anything before, And to be honest, I've never really dug into Jimmy Snuka's career and how big of a star he actually was, because when I started watching, he was kind of just that job guy, crazy high-flying Samoan. I had the action figure, where you had to push the back and he left up, and he had his Samoan pose going. So, that's kind of what I remember him as. Not really anything big, but, I acknowledge what he did for the industry. That jumping off the cage is one of the most iconic pictures, videos, moments ever. So, rest in peace. And it's sad that, he was sick for a while and he had to go through this whole murder thing. Not that that wasn't his fault or whatever the case, but it is what it is. It's a shame that happened in the first place. It's a shame it came out so late in his life when he was sick and was going through all this. And, it's glad that, like you said, he's not suffering anymore. And this is all kind of over for everyone. Everyone gets that closure that they kind of needed, hopefully.
No, 100%. All right, so should we move on to some Ring of Honor news?
Yeah, I mean, you had the chance to go down to Atlanta for their return to center stage, and, just how was that? How was everything there?
Oh, it was super cool. The center stage venue is like very different than anything I've been at for wrestling. It was like stadium seating. So it was like on risers a little bit. Which
kind of makes sense for the center stage name, like now that you mention it, it actually is like the stage.
Oh no, it's actually like, it's a theater. It's like center seats.
That's what I'm saying.
So that was pretty cool. So I was there for the tapings. I'm not going to reveal a lot, just because you can watch it or you can go over to my article.
Yeah, we don't have to go into detail on that.
There are a couple challengers basically for the world title coming up. Something that's not really
Go ahead.
Something that's not really a spoiler. The show that we're going to go to, I believe, the Manhattan Mayhem show, Bobby Fish is going to challenge Adam Cole for the title.
Right.
By the way, right before we end, we're going to share an interview that I got with Bobby Fish, actually, where I was actually talking about that. So it was kind of cool. Like, I literally talked to him about it right before the show started. And then, 2.5 hours later, the crowd is chanting next world champ," as Bobby Fish is standing in the ring. So that was...
I thought they were chanting that at Daniels.
They actually did. So by the end of the night, there were two.
Nice.
There were two chants.
Next world champs.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really, I don't believe, any kind of spoiler, because Ring of Honor themselves and Daniels tweeted it out, but he ended up winning the Decade of Excellence tournament. So he will also be challenging for the world title, depending who the champion is, or no matter who the champion is, he'll be challenging for it at the 15th anniversary show. And we got to talk to him, about a week ago, and it's cool to see somebody who's been with the company for so long get that kind of that recognition, and at the age of 46, which is just kind of absurd.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I hate that they have Adam Cole versus Bobby Fish at Manhattan Mayhem. Then they basically have Adam Cole versus Christopher Daniels at Supercard, right? Mm-hmm. And then they have Dalton Castle versus Adam Cole at whatever is after that.
Supercard of Honor.
What's Daniels?
So Daniels is at the anniversary show.
Oh yes.
And the Castle match will be at Supercard of Honor.
Yeah. Which I mean, come on, what? Are you telling me Adam Cole's going to win? I don't necessarily believe it, but you're making him 3 title matches that kind of matter and should be for the title. I don't know.
The one thing I will say is, though, when Silas Young won the Honor Rumble up in Buffalo, I believe, I thought it was a weird choice, and I thought that there might be a title change before that because of the fact that it didn't make sense to me that Silas Young, the heel, would be wrestling Adam Cole, the heel. And that still happened. So,
right, but that's not... I don't... Yeah, but that's not advertising 3 title matches past...
Oh, okay.
Clearly he's not going to lose to Bobby Fish if he's defending it against Daniels.
But I don't think they do it. I think the announcements... I think the way Ring of Honor runs stuff is they'll announce who the next couple matches are, and it doesn't mean that it has to stay that way, right? If the championship changes hands, then it's somebody else.
It never does, but still, I just hate that idea.
Yeah, it's tough because I think one of the issues is you're trying to sell all these events,
So just put Dalton Castle versus Adam Cole. Don't say Dalton Castle versus Adam Cole for the ROH World Championship. Just advertise the match. Don't tell me it's still going to be for the title. Advertise it as, if he's still the champion, maybe it'll be for the belt.
But Evolve does that.
Evolve does that. Right. They say if still champion.
Oh, so just saying if he's still champion. Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. That if is the part that's missing for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. At least put that or something. Don't just advertise 3 title matches and make me feel like he's going to win them.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't have to.
I get what you're saying.
I get
it. Yeah. I get it. I mean, I feel like the if is implied. That's just me, but I get what you're saying. That little if goes a long way to making it, I guess, a little bit more legitimate when you're talking about the idea that the title could switch hands.
Right.
And I mean, it's crazy to think that the 2 next challengers are 40 and 46. Wrestling's really... I think wrestling's in a different place when you're when guys who are really up there in the company and kind of at the forefront are now older. Yeah,
I mean, Batista was old when he's going. Cena's not that young, but I get what you're saying. 40 is a little old, but Daniels and Fish are 2 of the main guys in Ring of Honor and have been for a little bit of time. And Daniels, going back to which is cool that he's fighting for it at the 15th anniversary because he fought for it at the first anniversary. So that's pretty awesome that, a guy who's never held it is now going to fight for it 15 years after he fought for it the first time on the same show. So that, win or lose, that'll be a good moment. And I kind of hope he loses because that gives Adam Cole, even more heat and brings even bigger attention to him and what he's doing. And then you make the next guy. But, it'll be a cool moment if he wins and has that moment as the champion.
100%. Also this weekend, so there was some confusion. So I'm at the show, and I see Lee and Taylor absolutely destroy the Briscoes. Just put them through table like crazy. And first of all, the most over reaction was for a broom. After the table spot, the guy, the ring crew's in there, and they're trying to just with their hands get like all of the shrapnel, whatever, out of the ring quickly before the next segment.
Yeah.
So there are like 5 or 6 guys really working hard to do this, and then the crowd just starts chanting for a broom. Like instead of doing yes, going broom, 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 and a broom comes out, and the broom is so crazy over. Like everybody went wild when the broom came out, and then they started chanting "sweep forever." It was, as somebody who had the unfortunate circumstance of having to enter a ring after a broken glass bottle spot, and with my hand, basically alone, try to get all these shards of glass out of the ring while the crowd just is completely silent watching you. The idea that the crowd was going crazy for this broom and for the ring crew was just unbelievable. And then during the next match, Kenny King actually goes and grabs the broom, and like the crowd was like, yes! And then he breaks it. Yep. And he got so much crazy heat. It was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in person for a crowd that large.
Yeah, that's pretty fantastic.
So like I was saying, Lee and Taylor, they destroy the Briscoes, and then the next morning, Keith Lee ends up tweeting out that he's actually signed with Evolve.
Which just makes me, super happy.
Oh no, I'm happy for him. I completely understand wanting to move forward and be featured as a single star.
Right. He goes from, a tag team wrestler who was, I don't know what, like the 4th or 5th best tag team in Ring of Honor, or like on the rankings of who's next.
Yeah.
And now he is fighting Chris Hero in one of his last matches as supposedly requested by Hero, and that's a big moment, and he can be one of the main guys in Evolve right now. So especially with the connection to WWE, that's kind of where he should be.
Yeah, and I think it's good for both of them. I think it'll give both of them a chance.
It sucks for Shane Taylor. He's the biggest, sucks the biggest for him.
Well, what I think is great, though, is that actually Lee tweeted out. It's like somebody asked him, does this mean that you're done with Ring of Honor? And he said that he's fulfilling the obligation to the shows on the 3rd of February, and the 4th of February, and said that he promised his boy Taylor that he'd be there to fight the Briscoes, and he will be there. So, hopefully the way they construct it, something comes out of it, where, maybe they have a blow-up and Lee ends up leaving, and Taylor can move forward as a single star.
Right, I would have, Taylor kill him, lay him out or something.
Yeah, maybe just he turns on him,
Right.
It'll because I think the Briscoes are they're challenging for the titles in I think it's a best 2 out of 3 falls match with the Young Bucks the next night. So, on the 4th.
Take some suspense out of that one.
So you would think that the tag team match with the Briscoes is going to be the 3rd, and then something happens. The Briscoes look strong going into their title opportunity, and then you build Taylor, who I think Taylor's really good on the mic. And if you watched a lot of what they've done together, Taylor's usually the one who's sporting the mic. So it'll be interesting to see what's going forward, what happens with both of them, but. I loved them together. I loved their matches this summer. They had a triple threat match with the Briscoes and War Machine. Then they had basically like the fight without honor with the War Machine. And there's the whole backstory with Ray Rowe and how him and Taylor were together, which is like legit. They were actually together in Texas, and then Ray Rowe ended up going to Ring of Honor. So I'm hopeful for what it means for both of them going forward, and I'm excited to be able to see, Keith Lee on the 25th over at Evolve, and then 1 week later we'll be, going to see Taylor at Ring of Honor. So I think nothing could be better for both of these guys than to be featured more prominently on products.
All right, I completely agree.
And I think in terms of and you also have the news that O'Reilly was going to be down at the tapings. He was originally advertised. Yeah, and then he went back to his home promotion. I'm forgetting the letters now. Up in Canada, and he ended up winning that title there.
Which he said, like one more thing on the bucket list. So just one last thing he had to accomplish before really going to WWE and NXT.
And it's worth noting that Ring of Honor really hasn't updated their roster page very well. If you take a look at it, it's just a little behind the times. However, O'Reilly was immediately off their roster.
Yeah.
So
they gave him the belt at their biggest show of the year, and then a month later he's gone. So it couldn't have ended well and pretty,
Yep. And then tonight's episode that comes on, this whole Steve Corino Whitmer angle has been going on for a crazy long time. Now, at Final Battle, when Cody turned, on commentary, Corino said something like, the brother must be sacrificed. And they always the talk had always been that it was that Kevin Sullivan is the father, and either Whitmer or Corino had to be sacrificed. So Cody Rhodes comes out on the episode that was on yesterday on a Fight app, whatever, and aired on Sinclair Broadcast on Saturday night, and he says that the brother that had to be sacrificed was either Dustin or Cody. So then Cody and Corino have a match, and Corino ends up trying to get the golden spike and drive it through Cody's head to sacrifice him, and then Sinclair actually stops him, and then Cody is able to kick him, low blow him like he did at Final Battle to Jay Lethal, because apparently that's his new finisher, and then he ended up hitting Beautiful Disaster, and then he actually hit a bionic elbow to end the match.
Nice.
So it's a little weird that if you want to go back, this entire interaction was because Whitmer and Sullivan were trying to get Corino to admit that he's evil, and then he had to sacrifice either Cody or Dustin. But Cody was with
So basically, it came down to Corino being the only person to ever fight Dustin, and Cody, and he only had one match left in him, and instead of him, maybe Whitmer couldn't wrestle then or something like that, and it just became like, all right, well, I guess we got to wrap this up. Let's make it Cody, and then we'll move on.
I'm not gonna lie though, okay, all due respect, it's a little bit Hornswoggle-esque.
Right, exactly. Oh, this Ken Kennedy's hurt, or he's suspended, or he's fired. Forget it, Hornswoggle.
Who's it gonna be? You know what? Just make it Swoggle. Just go with it.
Somebody I don't know what I was watching, and Hornswoggle was there, and they mentioned something like, "Well, you were Mr. McMahon's son, weren't you?" Oh, it must have been TNA, and he was like, "Oh, no, that was just a joke, dude." Come on.
That's TNA.
He wrestled and won a match on TNA. I think he beat Rockstar Spud.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to try to be nice. All right, so do we have any other news to cover? Oh, do we want to leave it for next episode? Give them a little teaser about the announcement for somebody being inducted into the Hall of Fame?
I mean, it's not necessarily a spoiler. We can just touch on it quickly, and then, maybe we'll have some more light shed on it by Thursday. But, last night on Raw, or whenever you listen to this week on Raw, Angle was announced as the inductee to the Hall of Fame, and I'm pretty annoyed because I was on Instagram and ESPN or WWE posted a picture of it, and I was like, son of a bitch. Like, I would have liked to not know that and then been completely shocked when I saw it was Kurt Angle, because I would have never guessed that. I've heard Diamond Dallas Page or this person, never Angle. So, just I hate when they do this stuff like that, but It is what it is. I love him coming back. I hope he gets a match out of it some way, somehow, but I'm not going to hold out hope on that one, but I think that would be a nice way to go out.
Yeah, it does bother me. There are very few surprises we can have as wrestling fans, and having it, I don't know why they... I think they did it last year, didn't they? Like, they continually announced the Hall of Fame induction through, like,
right, on WWE.com. And, like, what do I have to unfollow ESPN? Like, that's some bullshit. Stop posting about wrestling. I don't want you talking about wrestling. Just give me sports that are not WWE, please.
Yeah, I mean, it is like spoilers, and it's something that... The other thing that doesn't make sense to me, though, is if... Okay, so normally your biggest name is the last name, right? Isn't it?
No, usually it's the first name.
Is it?
Yeah, like Savage and Warrior.
Okay, all right.
And
so
then it's like the second biggest, then like a tag team, and then a woman, then someone like people really never heard of. But it's supposed to be like Diamond Dallas Page, Beth Phoenix.
Really?
Some other people I've heard. Yeah, it's a little interesting. But, I mean, she was dope.
I mean, good for her, but...
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Mickie James is back. Trisha's already in. Lita's already in.
Yep.
Yeah, probably not going to put Molly Holly in at this point. Not yet. So...
she might already be in, but I don't know. There was like a table for three with like her, Alondra Blaze, and someone else there. I don't know.
No, I did watch that.
Yep.
I've also watched all the. Did you watch all the not ride along?
Oh, I gotta watch the new one.
It's the cartoon show where they're telling the stories.
Like story time.
Yeah, story time.
Oh, of course I didn't. I don't know if I watched all of them, but I watched whatever ones I knew were on.
I'm not sure if it added to... So I did it... I watched all of them while I was painting the new place. Yeah. So I just listened to it. I didn't watch it. Like,
watching them is pretty funny.
It is? It made it that much better?
Yeah, because, it's the like, random Ric Flair reactions that, like, they show on his face are pretty funny.
Have you heard... Speaking of, like, weird stories, have you heard Bruce Pritchard's new show?
No, not at all.
It's Something to Wrestle With. So basically, and it's crazy long.
With Cyrus?
No, it's what's his name? Conrad? Who is the guy?
Oh, from the Ric Flair?
Yeah. So
that's pretty terrible.
It's just they had one episode where it was just like people literally just tweeted out questions. But what the show is really centered about is like they pick a topic that people vote on. And they'll just like talk about that person. So, or like the 1997 Royal Rumble, or $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, or Mr. Perfect, or I listened to 2.5 hours of talk about Ravishing Rick Rude, and just like all the backstage stuff, all these crazy, like almost disgusting stories about them backstage, and how he was just kind of involved in everything. So it's It's not a wrestling news show, and it's not... It's almost like the Ric Flair show, but I think better. Because you had this guy who was backstage for everything, and he was dealing with Vince, and literally, like, somebody asked the question, like, is it true that Vince McMahon has a painting of himself in his office of him riding a unicorn shirtless? And he's like, well, he's got a picture of himself riding a motorcycle, but he's not shirtless. Part of it is just a little weird because, it's like the craziest things get asked of him, and he's like, that's ridiculous. He's like, that never happened. That never occurred. But some of the listening to him talk about Vince's reaction to when Ravishing Rick Rude was on Raw, and then that same night, like an hour later, was on Nitro with completely different facial hair and everything. And Vince going, motherfucker, and just being like, fuck, how did this happen? Like that kind of stuff is pretty cool. And I don't know, hearing that randomly, that Rude asked for more studs to be placed on his belt so it would hug him snugger, but that Macho Man actually asked for Velcro so it was easier to get it on and off. Like, just little things like that, I don't know, fill out my wrestling knowledge and make me happy. So it's a pretty good show. You should take a look at it.
All right, and as we speak, Shane McMahon just announced that there's an Elimination Chamber in 4 weeks for the World Championship. So that's pretty cool.
All right, look at that live news, depending when you're listening to this.
Right, if you listen to it in the next 40 seconds.
All right, so if all of the news is kind of out of the way, I just want to quickly, before we get to that point, just want to, just thank Bobby Fish for his time. And hope you guys enjoy the interview. All right, we're here with Bobby Fish. Bobby, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so actually I'm going to start off with what we were just talking about before we started the interview. You actually were a substitute teacher before you, broke into ROH and kind of went full-time with wrestling. What was the hardest part about being a substitute teacher?
I think the obvious one is that you're a little bit behind the 8 ball the minute you walk in. And for me, in the beginning, I worked in a bunch of different districts in order to get enough work. So in the beginning, it was more difficult because you're dealing with kids that aren't familiar with you all the time. I was fortunate enough at one point to get a ton of work in one district and then get a ton of work in one office in a particular high school, and it was a special ed office. So it was smaller groups of kids a lot of times, and these kids got to know me, and they worked closer with me because they were special ed kids. So they got to a point where they knew me. And in that office, I don't know, there was probably 20 teachers that used me. So in 1 week, I could pull 5 days easily in that one office for a different teacher every day or something like that. So towards the middle to end of my subbing, it got so much easier. But in the beginning, it was a challenge.
What was your favorite subject to teach?
I was an English major, so probably English, or I've always kind of been into art, and I'm definitely more of a creative thinker than analytical, so art and English were probably my 2 favorite, but because I did so much special ed work, you kind of tried to cover a little bit of everything.
Do you find yourself reaching back and grabbing some of that stuff that you learned, as an English major, when you're thinking about your character, when you're thinking about how you're going to go out there and what you're going to say when you're in front of the crowd?
I'm certain that there is some of that in the subconscious, maybe, but I don't know if consciously there's too much that I have pulled from it to necessarily change something or go one direction as opposed to another. But I would have to imagine there's a ton of subconscious that sways me one way or the other. Yeah.
So recently you lost the television title, and you didn't get a chance for it to challenge back for it at Final Battle, but you do have a shot at the world title coming up because of your victory at Survival of the Fittest. What are you hungrier for right now? Do you want to prove that title, the TV title, was yours and you want to have another shot at that, or are you just thinking about your world title shot?
I'm not opposed to anything when it comes to the pursuit of success within professional wrestling. The TV title was something that I needed to do, and I do feel as though I'm finished with it, at least for now. After Survival of the Fittest, certainly focus went to the world title. And I think for me, that world title at this point is, that's in my crosshairs.
Is there a part of you that, challenging for the world title right now, Adam Cole's the world champion, that you'd like to kind of get a little bit of a measure of revenge for your buddy Kyle O'Reilly?
Of course. I mean, the history with Cole goes back deep. Obviously deeper with Kyle than myself. But I'm not mincing words here at all. Kyle is my brother. And if Kyle has an issue with you, then I have an issue with you. And the issue between Cole and Kyle, like I just said, and then like you alluded to, has been long-running, and it's deep-rooted. So I share that disdain for Adam Cole. As much as I've always had eyes on that world title, if I've got to take it from somebody, yeah, let's make that somebody Adam Cole.
And you just re-signed with Ring of Honor for about 2 years. What does 2017 do you think hold for you going forward?
I think 2017 for me is a continuation of the success that I've had up to now. I think as a rule, I tend to walk around with a pretty big chip on my shoulder. The reasons for that chip at this moment, I guess I'll kind of keep to myself, but the chip on my shoulder is there, and it's not leaving. So for 2017, you are going to see Bobby Fish continue to do what I've done, and that chip will probably grow in size as the year goes on.
I actually got a chance to talk to Dalton Castle before Final Battle, and you guys had a little bit of a strain in your relationship over the summer because of the TV title. Sure. Are you guys doing brunch again now?
Well, I'll tell you, the TV title put definitely some strain on it. Dalton hasn't always been the biggest supporter of our failed podcast.
Mimosas and coffee, amazing.
Yeah, and it failed, I think, largely in part due to Dalton's growing lack of desire to be across a desk from me. So I refuse to shoulder any of that blame and place it all squarely on Dalton Castle.
Fantastic. Hopefully we'll see that back because it was really fun while it lasted.
Yeah. Time will tell.
And where can we find you on social media if fans want to follow you?
The Bobby Fish on Twitter and at the Bobby Fish on Instagram as well.
All right. And you check both those, right?
I do check both of those, and I know that there's other platforms out there. If anybody wants to Iggy me on those, the ones that I should be on, feel free to Iggy, and I might get on those too.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing your time with us tonight, and good luck in your match tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. Once again, thank you, Bobby Fish. Kind of cool to know that he was also he was actually a substitute teacher here in New York, so kind of a little bit of a kindred spirit. I can't believe he would be a sub. We talked about that, so kind of cool stuff. And it was nice to speak to him right before the show. So once again, thanks, Bobby, and I appreciate you sharing your time with us. Was that too formal?
No,
I should have said Mr. Fish. I don't know. I think I'm getting a little too friendly.
Mr. Robert, Mr. Fisher.
All right, so with all that out of the way, just want to remind you guys, we don't get paid for this. So head over to iTunes, please leave a review, rate, subscribe to us. You can listen to us on SoundCloud as well. You can find us on Google Play and Stitcher. Make sure that you guys go over to runningwildpodcast.com, check out all our back episodes. You can make sure that you check over at pwponderings.com, rohworld.com, and Last Word on Pro Wrestling for all my articles covering just tons of stuff. You can follow us on Twitter at RunningWildLWOS, and you can email us at runningwildpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Rich_Laconi, Laconi, for a bunch of weird wrestling stuff that makes Runz want to basically crush his face. And don't forget that we also have a contest ongoing for 2 tickets in the second row to Glory Pro's first show, February 19th. If you're in the St. Louis area, please, at this point, we're going to open it up. Email us. Email us anything about that show you want. runningwildpodcast@gmail.com. Send us a tweet. #BigMikeVerse and pick an opponent you'd like to see him wrestle in the future for that company. And you will win. You will be in the running. At this point, if you're the first person, you might actually just win the 2 tickets. So make sure that you guys follow through on that. And with all that out of the way, because I think that my co-host is going to go crazy, I just want to remind you that we are the podcast that is just 2 Sweet.